Hello and welcome. I am joined by Irish FENIAN, and we're going to discuss the 1986 film Highlander. So, Irish FENIAN, how are you?
How you doing betwixt? I'm keeping pretty grand, and thanks for inviting us on to have a little chat about this.
Yeah, I'm looking
Uh,
forward to talking about it. I don't think we go for too long. We'll probably do half an hour, 40 minutes, unless we completely get sidetracked, which is possible. It is possible. So, um, this film is from, as I said already, it's from 1986. It stars Christopher Lambert as Conor MacLeod, Clancy Brown as the Kurgan, and Sean Connery as the Egyptian. It also stars Roxanne Hart as Brenda and Beatty Edney as Heather. And yeah, I should also mention there is a girl. She's a girl and a woman, but the woman is played by Sheila Gish, and she plays Rachel Ellenstein. So, Irish Fenian, I should also mention, actually, yeah, I should mention, it's directed by Russell Mulcahy, a good Irish sounding name, and the screenplay is by Gregory Wyden, Peter Bellwood, and Larry Ferguson. The story is by Gregory Wyden, and it's produced by Peter S. Davis and William N. Panzer. Irish Fenian, uh, before we come on, we said that you hadn't seen this film until now. I myself have seen it probably 4 or 5 times since the age of about 15. What did you make of this film?
well, it was pretty interesting film. As you said there, when I was telling you, I'd never seen. Well, do you know what? I'd seen it years ago. You know, in video shops. You know, with the video boxes and all that. Like I always remember it from like the 80s and 90s. You know, that way, but I never actually seen it. But it's very interesting. Like all these, you know, the Americans were trying to latch on to all these Scottish Highlanders. You know, these gods. You know, they can't be killed. You know, they can only be killed by, you know, if one chops the head off each other. And I suppose, well, we might as well start from the start when, because there's a lot of cutbacks, you know, cutbacks to Scotland, you know, 1783, and then forward then to America. But there's a lot of cutbacks. But I suppose we might as well get into the start when he's at this wrestling match, and you can tell like he has no interest in this match at all. Like, you know, I think he thinks fighting is just like, you know, he's sick of it, he's done with it. But the crowd is going mad, you know. The crowd is, oh, you gotta love this and all, and someone's in his ear, and you know, and giving it loads and that. But he's no interest at all in it, so he ends up just getting up, and he goes down to this car park, and that's where he's met by this other Highlander, and he takes out a sword. This other Highlander fella, um, he's wearing glasses and a suit. He is, but at first, yeah, man, he goes by two names. He's McLeod is his Scottish name, and Russell Nash is his more modern name. But he doesn't. He first says, "Wait, you know, he didn't. I don't think that he wanted to fight him at all. But these all want, you know, the promised land, I suppose, what they're all being promised at the end of it, to kill each other. And then we have a big sword fight in the bottom of the car park of Madison Square Garden, and he ends up winning in the end, and then he ends up cutting your man's head off, and that's one of the Highlanders gone, another one, and we end up next scene. I think that's when the police show up, and then they also have it's like this little busybody. She writes books about ancient swords and all that. So she's the one that's then kind of starts finding little pieces and puzzles and that, you know. Um, what else will we go? What happens from there?
Yeah, well, I'll just go back. The first time I saw this, I was about 15, and it was Christmas. And, back then, in many cases, you had to just you had to wait and see what came on. And this film came on. I didn't know anything about it. And that first scene you've described there, it's in a car park close to Madison Square Gardens. Like, I remember watching that the first time, and I was kind of like, what the hell is going on here? Because I could just see McLeod. I don't know, is he wearing a trench coat or something? And then there's the other guy who's wearing formal business attire, and they're having a sword fight. You know, it looks like really weird. You've got these two modern guys, you know, modern enough, 1980s, in a very urban environment, and they're using swords. They're fighting each other with swords, and I think it's actually a very good scene. And as you mentioned, that woman Brenda, I think she works for forensics, really, and she's fascinated when she finds out. You know, she figures out that, I think she finds the sword, and it's what's it called, a Toledo Salamanca. So it's some Spanish sword, and she tells her boss that it's an antique, and he's like, how much would it be worth? And she's like, how about a million bucks? So you've got this $1 million sword at the scene of the crime. You've got a man who is being beheaded, and it's very strange when you watch this for the first time. It's a very strange scene, this whole thing.
Yeah, and then he can hear the coppers coming. He can, and he knows that he has to get his ass out of there quick. He does, but he's driving the car very fast out, and the cop cars come from everywhere, and he's stopping, and then he's taken downtown. I I have to say, I found when he was in the interrogation room was a bit funny. It was there was a very young looking copper, and he looks quite nervous at first when he's on his own with him. But then I think the chief comes in with that sword that you were talking about, you know, that's worth $1 million, and he throws it on the table. He does, and he says, "What's this?" And the chief obviously is expecting, because the man is in his current day form. He's an antique dealer, so he's probably, thinking that, oh right, this is a Toledo Salamanca sword, it dates back to whatever. But he just looks at it, he does, and he says, "It's a sword." And the other young copper then starts getting a bit more bold because I don't know, his boss is there, and he's like, what's it he say? He goes, he was talking about his accent, you have a very funny accent or something. Where are you from? And the McLeod says to him that I'm from all over the place, But then he then, and this is something that you would not hear these days in a film. He then goes, "Are you a faggot, Nash?" That's what he says, and I just think, like from the 80s go like to today, like you would not hear like things like that, because today, like back then, it was more of a slur, and like now it'd be like, what's the point of even saying it, because he probably is.
The funny thing is, in this film, like every 5 minutes or 6 minutes, you hear Freddie Mercury singing, so but yeah, there is that, and that actually goes on for a good few minutes, that interaction between the cop and McLeod, or Nash, and it's like they're accusing each other of being a homosexual. So it just shows that not so long ago, just a few decades ago, and Hollywood would do their best to try and destroy this, but it still wasn't really acceptable, the idea of being homosexual. It was still, people were very much skeptical of you if you were, and they would call you names.
This is it, yeah, and like, but so yeah, man, like I thought that he would have been under arrest, like at the scene of the crime, but he's like, so am I under arrest or not? And then he just walks out, and no, but we've got things to do and all that. But going back to the young copper, the back and forth that they have after he says that, and there is a bit of cheesy acting in it, I have to say that. But your man McLeod turns around, he goes, "Why are you cruising for a piece of ass?" This kind of it's a real 80s kind of take on things, and he says, yeah, the chief then says to him, I've got a theory, what happened. He says, you and this man were arguing down in the car park, and you were arguing over the price, and you wouldn't pay it to him, so you chopped his head off and all, and then was it the copper says, I think it was McLeod says, yeah, I've another 30. He was so depressed at watching the wrestling, he went down and he cut his own head off. And then the young copper then says to McLeod, he says, "No, you went down for the blowjob and just didn't want to pay for it, didn't you, Nash?" So you have all that going on, but as I said, these days, you wouldn't hear that and things, even though it's a lot more out there these days, isn't it?
Very much so, very much so. What did you make of the scenes? So it goes back in time to when Nash was Conor McLeod from the clan McLeod, and they're going off to fight a battle against another clan. What did you make of these scenes? Like, I just say that when I first watched it, I couldn't get over the scenery, the Scottish scenery, the Highlands, and it was shot in Scotland. A lot of this film was shot in Scotland. I just thought it was beautiful, beautiful scenery. But what did you make of it anyway? His interactions with his clan, his finding out that he comes back from the dead. The villagers all think he's dead, but they have a wake for him, and then a few hours later he's in the bar or in the tavern having trying to get a drink.
Yeah, as you said, it was lovely scenery going back to the that time, and yeah, they're going off to do a big battle. It's they're the almighty McLeods, and they're against this other clan. And I think is it his first time out in battle, because his family are slagging him and all that, like, are you scared and all this, and and one of them says, go away, first time I went into battle, I peed myself and all. But they end up going into battle, and no one will fight this. No one will fight him, because I think it's who's the other Highlander. He's the main antagonist.
He's the Kurgan, and just to say before I forget. Yeah, he's called the Kurgan. But just to say before I forget, like, we're told later by Sean Connery's character that the Kurgan is from the Russian steppe. And I thought that was interesting, because in most of the 1980s films, the bad guy has something to do with Russia. It's, you're going through the Cold War. So they mentioned he's from the Russian steppe, and that he comes from a people who, they throw children to starving dogs and watch the dogs fighting over the children as they pull them apart, something like that. So you get a very dark picture of this guy. But in this scene you're mentioning now, the Kurgan he's made an agreement with the rival clan that nobody is to touch McLeod, because McLeod is his. So the Kurgan already knows that McLeod is an immortal, but McLeod himself doesn't know this at this moment in time. He thinks he's just like everyone else.
Yeah, and McLeod goes into battle, and there's, as I was saying about cheesy acting, but there is another bit of bad acting, because he's there and, why won't you fight me? Somebody fight me.
I have to say there is some appalling acting in this film. I still like it. I still love this film, but there is some just horrendous acting.
Fight me, damn you! Fight me! Yeah. But yeah, but no one will go near them, because, as you were saying, yeah, they Kurgan made the deal, and he comes out of with his horse. He comes out of nowhere, and he's all in this gold kind of, overall thing, and he ends up, he doesn't actually, like, he doesn't cut his head off. He stabs him in the side, so only a Highlander can be killed by beheading him. And as you were saying, yeah, the family end up, I think they had massive losses, I think, and they end up having a wake for him. And
Yeah.
I,
Just
I
sorry, Irish Fenian. Just to say that the Kurgan did he stuck his sword into him, and then he was getting ready to decapitate him when MacLeod's kinsmen came on the scene, and they managed to get rid of the Kurgan. I don't know, they were shoving him off or something. So that's the reason he didn't get his head chopped off. The Kurgan did try to decapitate him.
Yeah, yeah. And then the family have a big wake for him, and I had to laugh at one of the family members, because there was a redheaded girl, can't think of her name now, but she was crying over him, and one of the Scottish chaps says, "Oh, go away, you that woman. The last thing a Highlander wants to hear is a woman wailing." Like, so, but then the very next day, like, you don't see him rising back up or anything. The very next day, like, he just enters the pub, and they're all like, "Oh, this, like, you're in league with the devil. You must have made a pact with the devil or something. How are you still alive? You were dead yesterday, and today, And then his family, like, put him in, them, what's the kind of wooden stocks that they used to have years ago. And he started, like, they were going to burn him at first, and it was only for one of his family members banished him, said, right, on your way. But he was thrown out by his family. And that, I do kind of think, with recent events, with the spoof and that, there was a lot of people fell out with their family over that, as well. And
It's
but
it's a wonderful scene, that is, actually, and like he doesn't understand it because he's thinking, this is my blood, and he says, I think he says to one guy, we've been kinsmen for 20 years, and but it doesn't matter to them. They've got this notion in their head now that the devil's in him. He's different. He's not the same as them, and therefore he has to be murdered. He has to be killed, as you said. He's in the wooden stock. I think that he's half stoned to death by the time they're getting the bonfire ready or whatever. And it's I don't know, is he one of the leaders of the clan? But Angus is his name. He's an older man. He says there'll be no burning here today, and he says to MacLeod, "Can you walk?" MacLeod says, "I'll bloody well walk out of here," and that's it. Yeah, he has to leave. He has to leave his village and go out into the world, and that's when he meets his love, Heather, this beautiful curly-haired blonde one.
that doesn't last for long, though, because Sean Connery's character, what's his name, Juan Sanchez or something. I think he's meant to be Egyptian with an accent like that. But he
Yeah,
turns up, and he, like, he knows who he is, like, straight away. And like, McLeod's, like, looking at him, like, there's a scene where, like, he even takes him out onto the river, and he's like, I can't swim, because McLeod at this point doesn't know that he's immortal. And so Sean Connery's character, Sanchez, is trying to show him that, listen, you're the same as me, brother, we can't die. And then he starts, showing him, like, as I said, with the river. He throws him in it, and McLeod suddenly realizes that he can breathe underwater. And then he starts, teaching him, sword fighting. And he starts teaching him the ways, like, to be a good, like, Highlander, and to have good skill and that. And but the thing with uh McLeod is, like, he just wants a family and wants to just settle down. But this is all thrown on top of him, and he doesn't want it at all. Like, You know, it's like, you know, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place there, he is, you know.
Yeah, Sean Connery's character. Actually, I found the full name. It's a long-winded name. So let me hear it is.
Oh, is it a bit like Irish Fenian make Ireland grand again?
It's very, very fancy like that. Very fancy and long-winded. It's Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, but I think he just calls him Ramirez, or he also calls him Spanish Peacock. Um, but yeah, he tells him as well. So he starts training him, and he tells him about because when he finds out he's immortal, once he tops him, into the river, and then McLeod is under the water, and he realizes he can breathe underwater, and he eventually gets out, and he tries to kill Ramirez. He tries to sneak up on him, but he's so slow and ponderous. Ramirez has his own blade at McLeod's neck in like a split second, and when he realizes he's immortal, he has this kind of I don't know, he kind of half faints, and he's in pain, and Ramirez says it's called the quickening, and he explains how all the immortals, as time progresses, they'll have this desperate need to decapitate each other, and until there's one left. And he asks him, he says, "Did you ever have that feeling before?" And McLeod actually says, "Yeah, I was in a battle once, and there was this guy." And that's when Ramirez says, "Ah, yeah, the Kurgan. He's one of the strongest." And there was something else I wanted to say here, Irish Fenian, about. Oh yeah, so Ramirez explains to him. He says, "You're immortal, but you cannot have children." And McLeod says, "That's not going to please Heather." And the funny thing is, he never tells Heather that he's sterile, which I always thought was a lousy thing to do. She never knew that he couldn't have kids. And later on, when she's dying of old age, she says to him on her deathbed, "I wish I could have given you kids." And he still doesn't tell her. He just says, "Oh, they would have been fine children." Um, so yeah, I just thought that was kind of a bad part of his character. Anyway, continue, Irish Fenian.
Yeah, like as you were saying there, because when he was talking to what was it, Sanchez or Ramirez? Yeah, when he was talking to him, he was telling him, "I'm saving you the pain, I'm saving you the hurt," because he was saying that he had three wives. I think he was born centuries ago or something, and he says, "I'm just saving you the pain because like McLeod has to look at this, lovely woman, and she's getting older and older, and he never ages." And I do actually think then as well, if you actually think about that, if you could take a pill or something tomorrow and this could make you live forever, would you want to do it? And then like you'd see all your family members die, you'd see your friends die, you'd see everyone around you die, and you would just go on and on and on. Like, would you really want that?
Well, the scamdemic has told us that the majority of people, probably 90% of people, would like to live forever. They'd be willing to kill. They'd be willing to kill people in order to live forever. Like you saw them. Uh, they saw you walking around without a mask. They had their phones out ready to call the cops. They were in your face. You know. Um, so I think most people would like to live forever, and they probably, instead of reproduction, they'd opt just to live forever. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Elon Musk has his way, what did you say? You'll be able to download your head onto a laptop or your brain, and you can sit there for the rest of your days as a computer. That's not the life that I'd like now. But yeah.
But the good thing about life is knowing that it'll end eventually. I wouldn't like the idea that it's going to go on and on and on and on interminably. I suppose it depends on who you are, but I think what gives life value is the fact that we know it's not forever. And Patricia mentioned there in the live chat, she said her favorite song is Who Wants to Live Forever. I concur. I must have listened to that 100 times. It's a fantastic song. Very strong lyrics as well.
Yeah, like I'd be more of the idea of like because I've had close family members die already even when I was younger, and it's like you know would I want to live forever with that happening all the time, just going to funerals all the time, and people your close family, your extended family, your friends. No, I don't think that I'd like that at all.
I think you'd feel very lonely. Like if you're going to live for centuries, I think you're going to start feeling really, really lonely. As you said, seeing so many people die throughout, you see generations and generations of the same family. A score of generations of the same family dying. Like I think that would just be horrendous to witness. So don't think the human mind or the brain could cope with that really. Yeah, but just to say as well, like when Heather is dying, so the makeup isn't great because she still looks really young. I think they've just put like gray eyebrows on her, and she's wearing a gray wig, but like she still looks fairly young. But they're making out, she's really old now. And when she's on the sick bed, she actually says, "I don't want to die." I think it's a very sad scene. She says, "I don't want to die. I want to stay here with you, Connor." And what can he say to her? Like, I just. And then she says, "Where are we?" And I think he says, "We're on the Highlands. We're running down. We're running down a slope." And he says, "You're wearing your sheepskins, and the boots that I made for you." And that's as he's saying this, that's when she actually dies.
Yeah, excuse me, because she died before Ramirez dies. Because do you remember Dave Corkin shows up and he is talking to your one Heather, isn't he? The younger one, like the younger version of her.
Sorry, repeat that, Irish Fenian.
Remember when Dave Corkin shows up? Like she's not like that's the younger version of her, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. She's having. I don't know where McLeod is. He's not there. They have built this sort of tower out of stone, and again, like the scenery, like everything is just beautiful. The lake, the mountains. You get the feeling it's not too far from the sea either. Fantastic scenery, and they're having wine, and Ramirez is explaining about some. I think it was he had a wife in Japan, and the emperor had given him this really expensive samurai sword. It was thousands of years old. They were saying something. I think they found out later, like in the 80s, the forensic department, that the metal had been bent or whatever 42 times. But he's on about he's drinking wine, and he's regaling her with these stories from the past, and he's saying that he climbed in the window with a rose between his teeth, and when he got in, there was a different woman there. And Heather's laughing. She thinks this is hilarious. And she's like, "What did you do?" And he said, "Well, he says, I spoke to the woman that was there, and she was most helpful." And it's around then. So it's like a really nice moment. But suddenly, Ramirez notices something's not quite right, and he looks up. And as he looks up, there's a flock of pigeons, and they all fly upward. And that's when the Kurgan arrives. And they have a fight scene. Ramirez almost chops his head off, not enough. And in the end, the Kurgan decapitates him. And we find out that he rapes Heather. But McLeod, aka Nash, he doesn't find out about this until the 1980s in America.
Yeah, because he was and it was it was one of them scenes where like the heavens were coming in on the this big huge like a little castle that he built. It was all falling apart, and like that's how your man has such a deep voice in it, because when he first the Kurgan shows up, um Ramirez, he gets him right in the throat. He does, But it's a pity that he wasn't just a bit more further in. But that's and he's like, oh, it hurts, doesn't it? And he's stabbing him, but as you said, yeah, he gets the upper hand, and then yeah, we do find out that he rapes her, but he was asking beforehand who's the woman, and then he goes, oh, she's mine, but we end up finding out that it was a lie, all along. But geez, that'd be a horrible thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I always wondered. Like, I think Ramirez, he said, "Oh, she's with me." I think he was trying to protect her. He thought that maybe the Kurgan wouldn't bother because the Kurgan seemed to be more for getting the Highlander McLeod. So I think if he'd said, "Oh, she's McLeod's wife," I think the Kurgan would have killed her. So by him saying that, he probably saved her life. Obviously, she still went through hell.
Yeah. And then I think it cuts back to modern America when one is her name Brenda, the one that she's the forensics, but she also writes the books for ancient swords and that. She tries to actually set Nash, well, it's now Nash, but Nash up McLeod, and like she has a tape recorder, she loads a gun, and then there's the old bill outside and all that, and he comes over and like he copped it all straight away, finds the gun, finds the tape recorder, sees the coppers outside, and he's like, you don't just deal in, or he actually gave her the present of her book. You don't just deal in ancient swords, do you? But yeah, no, I was gonna say there was a scene, and I don't know because this is live and that, but I'll just say this is definitely the unmentionables coming in here. There's a scene where, because as it's
Sorry,
going through time,
sorry, Irish Fenian. Sorry to cut in here, but is this the scene that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the rest of the film?
yeah,
Is this a scene that possibly helped with the funding of the film? This
could be,
short,
could be.
this 10-second clip possibly funded the entire film.
Yep. I would. Do you know what? I would put all my money on it, and I'd even rob a few houses and put their money on it. Yes, you're definitely right. There's a scene where McLeod ends up. He's in World War II. Well, obviously he's living through the ages since 1873, but he finds this little girl. It's like this kind of. It's out in this cabin, and he's like, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And he picks her up, and then we see this German Nazi, this scumbag, this roustabout. We see him coming in with his MP4. He just shoots, indiscriminately shoots McLeod in the back.
You're fading out there, Irish
And
Fenian. I don't know if it's my connection or if it's your end.
do you know what? Yeah, call came through there. That might have
Right.
been it.
Right,
Can
so
you hear me now?
go again there. Describe the scene. So he finds this little girl. I think she's under a piece of wood or something. He manages to rescue her, and as he's
Yeah,
about to leave the scene with her, he gets shot by one of those horrible Nazis. The Nazis, just horrible people. Like thank God, there are no Nazis left in the world because the world would be a very degenerate place if the Nazis had survived.
that's yeah. There's this small little girl. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
I
Can you?
can, yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Irish
Okay.
Fenian, yeah.
Yeah. No, but there's the small little girl, and he just picks her up because, like, she's obviously without her parents, and but this, look like an SS officer maybe comes in with his MP40, and he just fires away, blasts away, like as if like indiscriminately, you're scum, like I'm great, like and you won't like because he can't die because there were only bullets. Um, the girl says to him like, "How come you're not dead?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a kind of magic." And he gets up and he manages to get the weapon off the German. And again with cheesy acting, he says, he goes, "Move over there," and the German says, "Nine," as in no. And McLeod says, whatever you say, Jack, you're the master race." And he just fires the MP40.
When I was watching this, I was thinking like this is typical Hollywood fare, right? And I was thinking, Indiana Jones as well, like the amount of Nazis that are killed in the Indiana Jones, one of those films anyway. Um, it's like must be like in the triple or whatever figures, hundreds and hundreds get killed. But I was watching this and I was thinking, by Hollywood's quote unquote standards, Nazis in films have about the same value as the Alien films. The aliens in Alien that reproduce at an exponential rate, and you can kind of just fire at them all day and kill them. Like Nazis are practically in the same category as the plague of aliens on spaceships.
Yeah, and isn't it mad in every Hollywood film, like there always seems to be they seem to be these, horrible, nasty bastards that, they've no empathy, they've no, critical thinking, for themselves or anything, it's and I assume that he was probably a closet homosexual as well, I'm surprised that he didn't throw something in there like that as well.
Yeah, it'd be like that last film we reviewed, Falling Down. If he could only express his, if he could only live calmly with his homosexual tendencies, then he wouldn't turn into a horrible Nazi and go on the warpath. But yeah, it's very like I watched the film recently for this review, and I'd kind of forgotten about that part. And then it just comes up. It just comes up like it's a very short scene. Is it even, I don't know, is it even 25 seconds, 20 seconds long? But it just had to be done. And as I watched it, I said, this must have, like, it seems so against the running of the whole script. I know they're showing different epochs. They don't show many different epochs, but they show a few. And this one just seemed weird. Like they just threw it in there. And obviously you're thinking, well, it's Hollywood. And, these films, you might think they're just for fun, but obviously there's messaging being put into them here. And this was done in so many films. For no apparent reason, suddenly you get to see Nazis being killed. So, yeah, continue anyway, Irish Fenian.
Well, like, yeah, as you said, there's like there was a lot of things like to pick out one thing. Like, I mean, you could have picked the First World War. You never talk about this. Is another thing as well on TV. If you have a look at telly these days, which I rarely do, but anytime you look at it, you see nothing about World War Two. Remember World War Two, and I'd always say, well, what about World War One? Why didn't you ever talk about that? Like they never talk about this. What started it? Oh, some what was it? The Duke of Franz Ferdinand. Yeah, it was all one bloke getting shot started World War One. Yeah, my arse. But they never. You just have to remember. The lampshades, the bars of soap, the sausages. You just have to remember all that kind of stuff. Um, but
Well, that's the stuff that people would remember. That's the kind of stuff they would remember. They wouldn't they wouldn't think of the tens of millions of European men who died, who shed blood. They wouldn't think of them. They'll think of inanimate objects such as lampshades and candles and whatever else. But yeah, anyway, we've digressed, as the film did as well. But continue, Irish Fenian.
well, what happens after what's the they cook and kills I keep calling him Sanchez Ramirez. I think there's a cut back to America. I'm trying to see where we are now.
Well, it doesn't matter too much, Irish Fenian. We can just say that there are a few more deaths in America. Was it? I think it's around New Jersey or somewhere. And there's a final showdown then between the Kurgan and Nash, aka MacLeod. And the Kurgan he's kind of using Brenda as the damsel in distress, that Nash must rescue her. And yeah, they have the showdown with her help. Nash comes through and he is the one. And his prize is mortality. That's his prize, He was immortal, but now he's going to be mortal. So now he can actually get old and die like everyone else. That's his prize. Plus, he's been gifted with acute schizophrenia. He can hear the voices of everyone all over the world. He can hear the politicians and the scientists, and he'll be able to bring them together as a sort of diplomat. That's his prize. But anything else, coming up towards the end of the film that you think is worth talking about?
Yeah, well, I was just got to think that there was a couple of things. Do you remember there was I think he was there's a black Highlander. Yeah, black Highlander that shows up. And they seem to know each other, and they haven't met for 100 years or something like that. But they were reminiscing about some, the last time that they met. And do you remember it was a real kind of a posh fight? It was. I think he was fighting a Frenchman, and the Frenchman had his was he his butler or something? But every time that he stabbed MacLeod, the French, his butler was, kissing him on the cheek and oh, great sir, and all this, really licking his arse and MacLeod just keeps on laughing and laughing, and he turns around and he has to keep stabbing him, and he doesn't realise why he's not dying. And then MacLeod just says, "Listen, I'm very sorry for calling your wife a bloated warthog," and he just walks off. He does. And then your man's butler just takes out two guns and he says, "Oh, here, sir, here," and he's kissing him on the hands and all this, and he's like, but doesn't your man that MacLeod was fighting? He ends up turning the guns on the butler and he just shoots him instead.
Yeah, that's actually that's a good scene. I think MacLeod he's hammered drunk, so he can't actually. He can't really do any proper fencing at all, and he keeps being run through. And as you said, the butler, he's an obnoxious little fucker, isn't he? And I'd say he gets his just desserts. He keeps kissing his master every time the master stabs MacLeod. But yeah, there's another scene I forgot to mention, Irish Fenian. And I remember watching this as a teenager, and I thought, "Oh, this is a bit mad." It's where the Kurgan and MacLeod are sitting in the church in America, and the Kurgan has no respect for the church whatsoever, and he starts making faces and grunting at these two nuns who are walking by, and then that's when he reveals to MacLeod that he raped Heather back in Scotland. All those centuries ago, and MacLeod is getting really angry, and he wants to cut off his head there and then. And the Kurgan says, "Remember what Ramirez taught you. They can't actually fight each other on holy ground. So hallowed turf, whatever." So what is it? MacLeod says, "I'll be out front," and the Kurgan says, "We'll see each other soon enough." And then he starts putting the Kurgan, he's shaved off his head, he looks like a total mess, but he's shaved off his head because he doesn't want to be caught by the police. and he's in the pews, and he sits back with his hands behind his head, and he lifts up his legs, and he puts his feet up on the top on the pew in front of him, and he's laughing like a madman. And you can see the priest comes up to him and says, "Sorry, but people in here are trying to pray." He grabs the priest, and then he says, "I'm very sorry, Father." He says, "For I am a worm." And as he says that, he starts licking the priest's arms with his tongue. It's just a bit mad. I just think the scene is a bit mad. But what did you make of that scene?
Yeah, I thought of that scene, and like the way the major man, Dave Corgan, like he's like this 16-year-old little punk or something. He's like this child, like And as you were saying, yeah, with the nuns, I think he says, "Happy Halloween, ladies," or something like that, and then he starts flicking his tongue at them. And then, as you said, with the priest, because he's putting his feet up on the pew and all that, and the priest comes over, yeah, people are trying to pray, and then he goes, "Oh, Father, forgive me, but I am a worm." And then the way he licks his hand, and I'm just thinking, there's no other religion in the world that you'd be able to mock like that. Like, would you be able to do that with, the Judaism or Islam or, you know?
It's a mad scene, like, because when I first saw this film, it was still, yeah, obviously it was changing. It was late '90s, but as someone who grew up in Catholic Ireland, you're seeing this a guy in a film who's completely he seems to be completely at odds with the church and completely disrespectful of the church. And as you said, you couldn't imagine that in a film of someone, for example, in a synagogue or a mosque, doing that in a film. It had to be like a Catholic church. It just shows you the power they had in Hollywood by the 1980s. Like I think it really started off in the '70s with The Exorcist. Like, because there was a Catholic lobby that it was able to hold in check Hollywood a bit up until then, and then the '60s, '70s, you could just see who had the upper hand. And by the 1980s, the Catholic lobby was very, very weak.
Yeah, you talk about the Exorcist there. I remember that was banned. Excuse me, that was banned in Ireland for 25 years. That was. Now I seen it years ago as a kid because I used to go down to a small video shop, and he used to always have like a couple of copies under the table of like videos that were banned and that. Because like I grew up in I went to a Christian Brother school, grew up in Catholic early. There was prayers in the morning, prayers before you left. But that's all thrown out the window now. But as I said, like if I had seen it years ago, like I imagine people would be like, thinking, "Oh yeah, throwing it to the church, yeah, yeah, dirty bastards," or something like this. But as I said, you wouldn't be able to do that with any other religion. No way, no, But it has to be, you know, whether it has to be. Well, I know there's the Catholics or whatever Protestants, but you still believe in Jesus Christ and all that, and the God or whatever. It's just it's like two birds of the same wing, left and right kind of thing. But yeah, it's like that kind of annoyed me a bit now. Like looking at it, it's nearly like when you look at Father Ted, and you can see some bits, and you can see like even though it's like funny and that, but they're really having digs at the church, like because right, fair enough, there was well, I don't know how many bad apples, but I mean the whole church wasn't corrupted like that, but. I don't know now, the way things are. Like, I do look at that Pope, and he's very, very liberal towards things, He like did he do anything to stop abortion coming into Ireland? Like, done fucking nothing. Like. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I say like Father Ted. I thought it was very funny when it came out. I think I could still watch it and probably laugh in parts, but as you get older, you can see that along with the humor, there's propaganda there, there's messaging, and it's to try and break down the order. But I will say that, like when Father Ted came out, think what came out, it started on British TV. I think it was like 95. It got onto Irish TV around 96. And I would say even at that time, the Catholic Church was on the wane. It might have helped accelerate the decline a bit, but I think it was on the wane anyway, because it was the early 90s when all the stories start coming out, about paedophile priests and how they were moved. If they caused problems in one parish, they got moved to a parish somewhere else on the island. So there was an orchestrated attack on the Catholic Church by the media, by foreign entities, and it was eventually going to. I think it would have happened anyway, but all these factors helped to hasten the decline, shall we say? But the Catholic Church, it had serious power. I think it had too much power in Ireland. Looking back, it was incredible, the amount of power it had. But that's for another evening's discussion. Have you any final thoughts for this film, Irish Fenian? We'll probably go for another 5 minutes or so, unless someone wants to ask a question about the film in the live chat. But apart from that, we'll finish up in a few minutes. So, what did you make of it overall, this film?
Yeah, I was going to say there was another funny scene that was. Do you remember the Marine in it? Do you remember he was driving down the road? He was, and he cops this sword fight that's happening, and he ends up driving back, and he's a whole car full of guns, and he takes out an Uzi, he does, and he's like, "Oh, this is the real thing. This is the real thing." So you can tell that he's only ever been to boot camp. He was well, I think what was he over in Vietnam? And he said he was paranoid. I'm not sure, but he was like, "This is the real thing," And he sees, and this is where the Dave Croken kills the black fella, and this is when they start looking for him, like the headhunter, like who is he and that. But he ends up like unloading the whole Uzi into him, and that does nothing. And I always find him mad because they Croken actually stabs him right through the stomach, and he lifts him up. He does. Now anyone else would be dead from that, but no, he's just in hospital, and then the OB will come in and see him the next day. Like, can you describe the man who done this to you?
Yeah, they think it's Nash. They show him a photo of Nash, and he's like, "No, it wasn't him. I know him." And he says, "And there's one thing else, there's something else." And they lean in over the bed in the hospital, and you can't actually hear, because the camera, the next scene is the camera's outside the bed, looking through, the curtain or whatever, and you can see them leaning over, and he's speaking, but we can't hear what he's saying. And then when the cops walk off, they're kind of like, "Yeah, sure," and then I think the boss says to the assistant, "Right, we don't want any rumors getting out about people getting their heads chopped off," or something like that. There's a question here from Cashlon Naluka, yeah, and he says, "Was there a second one?" I think there was. I think there might have even been a third one, and I think there's been a TV series as well. I think I saw, like, probably the early 2000s. I think I saw like a bit of Highlander 3, and I couldn't watch any more than 3 or 4 minutes. It was just didn't grab me. I think the first one seems to be the main one. The other ones, I don't know. Maybe people will have a different opinion, but yeah, I think they've made a few other ones with Christopher Lambert as well. All right, so I think that's it. Yeah, go ahead, Irish Fenian. Go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say, I do always think that they do that with sequels. They just end up ruining, the film like itself. So sometimes they should just, slow it down. Like, do you ever, how many Halloweens is there out now? And it's the same story all the time. This slasher comes out every Halloween, and he's going to, cut you up.
Yeah, it's fairly repetitive. It's fairly repetitive. Like, I will say, like Highlander, how the fuck do you make a sequel? Everyone's dead apart from him, and now he's mortal and he's going to die. So,
well, like that's his. as you were saying, like when he does have that big, sword fight with they cooking at the end, like when he does finally kill him, like there's it's a sword fight, there's lots of flashing lights, lots of because they're immortal or whatever. But when he does finally cut his head off, his head doesn't actually come off. It's like it's still stuck to him. And I was wondering, is he gonna have to give him a second blow or not? But no, it's just it opened. You see it kind of falling off a bit, and then but his reward was like he's as you are saying, he's like mortal now, and he's on this paradise, and he can have children. So that's his reward. Like he can have children now. He can have his normal life, what he always wanted. It's mad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's if he can get a wink's sleep, because he has voices in his head all the time. Everyone all over the world, he can hear what they're thinking, So maybe Edward Snowden. Maybe Edward Snowden watched Highlander when he's younger. I don't know. There's a question here from a guy called DT. Are you going to review Rob Roy? So, have you seen Rob Roy, Irish Fenian?
No, I haven't. And I've a feeling that that's not the real DT. To be quite honest, I'm not sure, but I haven't seen Rob Roy. No.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. All I know is the chap asked a question, and I thought it would be polite to answer it. So, I think that's it, Irish Fenian. Final thoughts on the film. This Drinking Life said, now wait a minute. Oh yeah, he's saying it's a good movie. He's on about Rob Roy. Yeah. I saw it many years ago, Rob Roy. Is who's the main actor in that? Is it the lanky fella from Ballymena? What's his name? He's in all those Taken films.
Liam Neeson.
Yeah. Is he in Rob Roy? I have this idea that he's in Rob Roy.
Well, I haven't actually seen it, to be honest with you.
Right. So anyway, yeah, that's it. Final thoughts on the film, anyway, Irish Fenian.
My last thought is there can be only one.
You heard it here, guys. You heard it here. There can be only one. Thank you, Irish Fenian. Thank you, audience. I leave it there. Until soon.